All right, Algebra 1. Hey, welcome back, guys. We are officially at the end of Chapter 4. All right, so we are in Section 6 of Chapter 4, titled Absolute Value Inequalities. All right, so we're kind of putting all of this stuff together where you're going to be solving multi-step equations, very similar steps to what you've done in Chapter 3. But now we're incorporating inequalities, and as you've learned throughout this chapter, there are things that inequalities do that kind of change the style of that equation. All right, so the first thing is to always remember that you're going to have two answers for inequality equations. Okay, so it's extremely important that you remember that those inequalities will create two answers. It's the absolute value, though, that really changes this whole thing up. Okay, that absolute value forces you to represent a positive answer and a negative answer. And when you put all that together, there's two total answers that you're going to be getting. Okay, and so when you're given the original problem, you have to make sure that you treat that original problem kind of as is. All right, and you're going to see what I mean by that. But then it's like you're going to create another problem when you flip the inequality sign, and then you change the sign of the constant value that's by itself. All right. As always, textbook should always be right there with you when you take these notes. There's a concept summary, as you see on page 228. Copy that down. All right. So this is me telling you it's important, and you should probably have it in your notes, and it's probably going to be really helpful when it's time to take your test for Chapter 4. Okay. So everything that we're talking about, a lot of this you have learned not only in the last section, but in the last chapter based upon the steps. But that last section, though, is extremely important to grasping this section. Okay. It's just that now we're replacing an equal sign with an inequality sign, which is one added step. Okay. And you see big letters here. Don't forget. First, solve the inequality as it's given. That's one answer. Then you're going to flip the inequality sign and then change the sign on that constant value, which is the number that's by itself on the other side. So if it started out as a negative, you're going to make it now become a positive, or vice versa. Okay, so let's see exactly what we're talking about through some example problems here for section 6. All right, so the first thing you see, let's start out with an easy one. We have absolute value x is greater than 2/3. So let's write it as is, because that's going to be the first answer. As is, x greater than 2/3. Boom, that was simple. That part's done. But there's always two answers. So here comes the second style, x. Now notice how the original inequality said greater. We flip it, so now it says less than. And notice how the original problem had a positive 2/3. Now we are going to say a negative 2/3. So that's what I'm talking about when I say flip the inequality and change the sign on the constant value. So look at what was given. Absolute value x greater than 2/3. Look at what I wrote in the blue. That's exactly what was given. Nothing we need to change, nothing we need to solve for. That's what we got. But now look what's written in the red. Flip the inequality sign and change the sign on the constant value. Okay, so let's take a look at another one that requires just a couple more steps. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is write this as is and solve for x. 2x minus 1 less than 11. All right, the steps that we take here, we add 1, 2x less than now 12. X is less than 6. So that is one of the solutions. Now let's rewrite it. 2x minus 1. Notice that doesn't change, but here comes the changes. Flip the inequality sign. It now says greater. And notice how it started as a positive 11. Now we're going to write negative 11. And now proceed with the second equation. Add 1, 2x greater than now a negative 10, x greater then negative 5. And there you go for that. So now you see what's written in blue is basically how it was given. We just took out the absolute value signs and solved it. What's written in red, you'll notice what was in the absolute value didn't change, but the inequality sign and the constant value, those are the two things that are changing. All right. Those are 2 example problems, guys. We only got 1 more to go. So this should be solid here, all right? But remember what you did in the last section. Remember how you have to take care of everything that's outside the absolute value first. Then we can proceed. So let's do that first. All right, so we have to add 8. Add 8. That crosses out. There's a 3. Absolute value 5x minus 6 less than or equal 13 plus 8. That's going to give us 21. Okay, we're still not done yet because we got to get rid of that 3 that's outside the absolute value. Okay, so we're going to divide both sides by 3. That crosses that out. And now we can rewrite what we have here. We have absolute value 5x minus 6 less than or equal to 7. Now what you possess is the inequality absolute value equation. Now we can proceed and actually solve for x here. Okay, so let's do the first one in blue. Write it as is. Okay, 5x minus 6 less than equal to 7. All right, we add 6, we add 6. We have 5x less than or equal to 13. Divide both sides by 5. X less than or equal. Can't do anything with that, right? It's going to create a decimal. It already is a reduced fraction, so leave it as 13 over 5. Okay. There we go there. Okay. Now we need to take a look. Let's go back to the original. All right. Now we got to rewrite this. The 5x minus 6. Remember, that doesn't change. But now we got to flip the inequality. Greater or equal. And that positive 7 is now changing to now become a negative 7. All right. Now let's go through the steps again. Plus 6 plus 6. 5x greater than or equal. It's going to be a negative 1. Divide both sides by 5. Gone, gone. X greater or equal. And again, that's going to be a decimal. Don't worry about the decimal. Leave it as reduced fraction, negative 1/5. Okay. That would be the second answer. So key steps to remember. You can't proceed until all you have is that absolute value on one side and the constant value on the other. So when I say that, I mean, take a look at what we had to do with this example 3. You had to get rid of that minus 8 by adding 8. Then you had to get rid of that 3 by dividing by 3. Then we could proceed. All right. And then you're looking at doing it just like we did 2. All right. Even 1 was very straightforward. But number 2 here, notice you have an absolute value and then the constant. So what you got to do is treat it as is. Remember, write it just the way it was given. Just don't worry about the absolute value. Solve for x. Then the second time you write it, whatever was in that absolute value stays, but then you flip the inequality sign and change the sign of the constant value, and then solve for your second answer. Okay, that's it, guys. That finishes up chapter 4. And again, if you have questions, you write them down, ask me during class. I'll do an example problem for you, as always in class. But make sure you're taking the time, all right? Take the time right here to watch these videos, because I know for a fact that will always help you come test time. All right. See you guys in the next one.